So let's tactically talk repricers, Andy, because I think this is where for arbitrage sellers specifically, this comes into play. This is what we're looking at. So what would be your advice for right now over the next kind of, while we're in this environment, while we see what the supply chain does, what would you recommend doing repricing? And then you already mentioned 60-day inventory turnover. What does that mean for you then? What are you tactically doing to make sure that happens?
Yeah. So a few things. Number one, I want to really highlight that you are married to your inventory. And so, as a reseller, a lot of times we can get caught up in feeding the beast and just acquiring, right, as much product as possible. When we scan, we see the profit margin there, but that's not the end of the story. That's just the beginning. When you acquire that inventory and send it into Amazon, that's when I think the real work begins. There has to be strategy. Even when you are inputting and, adding to that listing on Amazon, the product, and getting ready to send it in, there has to be strategy with your repricer. You got to take the totality of your business and picture. What kind of cash flow position are you in? How long are you willing to hold this inventory? Do you have a system where at 30 days, your repricer might become more aggressive? Or at 60 days, definitely, I would think your repricer is going to become more aggressive where you want to match that buy box. And then do you have a team, someone on your team, or are you, if you're a solopreneur, are you monitoring the amount of sellers that are on a listing, right? And so, when you scan it, it may show that there's 6 sellers. And then by the time you get it into FBA, there may be 50 sellers on there. Do you understand Keepa? Have you looked at the past, year on Keepa of what the sales velocity is of that item? And so you need to take all of that information and data to make a really good decision when you set that repricer, and to give you a good idea, depending on the amount of units you have, how long you're willing to hold that inventory. So, you need to lean heavily on Keepa when you set your repricer, when you're sending that inventory in, because that's going to really give you a good idea. Keepa not only shows you what the historical price has been, it also shows you the amount of sellers that were on that item. So you can see how quickly sellers drop off, which is going to give you a good idea how quickly you're going to be able to move that inventory based on the sales velocity. So, we often talk about this. We think Keepa is the number one tool you have to have. It's like $16 or $17 a month if you sell on Amazon, whether you're a private label seller or whether you're a, retail or online arbitrage seller.
A lot of times I think this can just get emotional because we all like to buy. Typically, most sellers like to buy, right? The buy process, you get the product, you buy it. In your head, you're thinking, hey, I bought this much and it's this much profit, right? You're already kind of calculating the profit like it's realized, but it's not realized until it actually sells. So that's the hard part. Most of us don't like repricing. We don't like looking at the inventory, enjoy going through the actual operational side of moving the inventory in and out of the system. And so we've just seen a lot of people's inventory start to bloat. Like you said, over time, it just builds and builds and builds because, we're not willing to take that loss. So we're just encouraging everybody to really evaluate that. Even if you're selling at a break even and it feels internally like, man, I just wasted my time getting that product. There was no point in me doing it. It's worth it to keep a strong cash flow position. We're doing that. We're probably going to take a loss right now when we write some of our inventory in the arbitrage, and we're going to take a loss on a bunch of product right now. We were just looking at it, and there might be a loss at a certain thing, but it's going to get us a cash balance that's positive. Because something that we're looking at that everybody has to right now is the cash flow situation with our credit cards, right? We've never paid interest on a credit card ourselves. I haven't, at least. I don't think you have, Andy, either, since you started selling on Amazon. Some people do, and that's kind of a decision you have to make, but we try to avoid that as much as possible. And so we're at a place right now where we have daily payouts in our account, but we still have to literally look and say, man, can we, if we don't want to add more cash into this specific business, do we have enough money in the bank to pay off the credit card before we pay it off, right? So obviously everybody needs to look at that, but you might want to just reprice a little bit more aggressively to go out there and buy better inventory that is going to turn fast, profitable, and just get rid of some of that old stuff. So again, we're pretty aggressive right away with the repricer, but we definitely have a setting at 30 days that gets even more aggressive. And then at 60 days, it's basically like, hey, this needs to be out of here. And it's not a liquidation strategy, but it's a very aggressive 60 days to try to keep that average inventory turn at 60 days or less. So that's arbitrage specifically.